Hello and welcome to the Mindful Men podcast, a show helping men to open up about manhood. My name is Simon Rennie and my aim is to get men talking. From mental health to fatherhood and everything in between, Mindful Men creates a safe space for conversation. Now, before we get into this episode, I want to say a huge thank you for joining me. It means a world for you to join me and talk about men's issues. And if you love what you hear, please subscribe and share the episode with your mates. You can also join the conversation on Instagram and YouTube, and I'd love to connect with you there. But for now, sit back, relax, and let's get mindful. G'day guys, and welcome to another episode of the Mindful Men podcast. I'm your host, Simon Rennie, and today we're getting mindful about swimming and how confidence in the water is really important for our safety. And to do that, I'm joined by Selena Willows from Ottawa, Canada. How are you going, Selena?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well. It's the start of a Tuesday here and the kids are off to daycare and vacation care, so I'm looking forward to a quiet day in the office. It's the evening over there, I understand.
It is. I'm lucky enough to have a hubby in the kitchen getting dinner prepped and lunches made and everything going for tomorrow so that by the time we're done, I just have to go say goodnight.
Nice. What's for dinner?
I believe fish and glazed carrots.
Okay, yum. That
Yes.
sounds delicious. Now, Selena, you're a CEO and founder of Swim to Safety, and we're going to be talking a lot about swimming and safety and what you do in this space today. But before we get started, I'd love to throw it over to you to tell us a bit about yourself and where you're from, where you grew up, some of those key moments in your life that make you you.
All right. Thank you. So so I am originally from Montreal, Canada, and I grew up there with lots of siblings in a very big household. And from a young age, I loved the water, loved swimming. When I started in traditional lessons, they actually had to move me up because I had gone too fast. So that's kind of where I started in the water. And then from there, I loved it so much. And the water safety and the idea of helping people really stuck with me. And so I ended up going through the programming to become an instructor and a lifeguard. And from there, it just took me on this whirlwind of a career that I never thought possible. So now I live in Ottawa, Canada, and I have two beautiful children. And here we are.
Can you describe for us, because we have a lot of Australian-based listeners, but we also have US and Canada as well. So for people who haven't been to Canada, and myself included, what's the natural environment like? Do you have beaches? Is it lakes? Is it pools? What's the swimming environment like over there?
Yeah, so regionally, a lot of backyard pools.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of people have pools, but here where we are in Ontario and Quebec, we also have an enormous amount of lakes.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of cottage country, a lot of people going boating and fishing and playing on the water, and of course those backyard pools, which here are astronomical in number.
What's the weather
Yeah.
like? Is it a year-round thing? Is it just during summer or?
Yeah, so we have a lot of indoor community pools because it gets very cold here and it is cold for a long time. Our summer season is actually really short. We swim, I would say, if you have a heated pool, you would swim from May till maybe mid to end September.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all closing up our pools now. It's October is hitting and we are done. We're closing pools. It's fairly chilly the rest of the year. So we don't get a lot of swim time in, which is why we have all these indoor swim pools.
Yeah, I guess we're coming into at the end of September now when we're recording. So I'm in subtropical Queensland, so it's getting warm enough to go out, and we've had our first few swims in our backyard pool, but also we've been down to the beach and the Australian coastline. The majority of the population lives on the coastline. So in the middle of Australia, there's not much, communities around there. There are communities, but there's no beaches. Very few, I would say, waterways. There's some creeks and rivers and things like that. But the majority of our population is on the coast with pools and beach access as well. But we'll get into that. And I love to talk to parents as well. So you're a mum.
I am.
What does it mean to you to be a mum? And tell us a bit about your kids.
Let's see. So I have two. I have a wonderful 12-year-old boy who loves to play Dungeons and Dragons, and
Oh,
is a very big reader, um, and loves to swim. And a daughter who is 10, who is, let's see, she loves fashion, I would say, very much into her clothes and what outfit she's going to wear, which is a lot of fun. Yeah, so I guess for me, in a lot of ways, it has become to be able to reflect on myself and do better for them, but in my life. It's fascinating when you start to realize that they're like little mirrors, and
yeah.
everything they do, you've taught them. For me, it's incredible opportunity to, do better than our parents did, and to try and right some of those things that we may have, not appreciated, or would have done differently if it were our own. But also the ability and the possibility to grow for myself as a person.
Yeah. And did you teach your kids to swim at a very young age? Like at what age did they get into the water?
Yeah, so my son had a non-fatal drowning incident when he was 18 months,
Hmm.
which is what prompted a lot of this for me in my adult years, or as a parent. But he was in the water as a baby. I would hop in the bath with him, and he would just lie on his back and float, and he would turn his head and put his face just under the water and right back up.
Oh,
It was
wow.
incredible to watch. Yeah,
Yeah.
he would keep his eyes open the whole way through. It was incredible to watch. So we had a bit of a bumpy start with him after that because he had that incident. And after that, it was really, really tough for him for a long time. So it wasn't until he was about 4 that we finally got him through that. Aria, however, my daughter, started swimming when she was 2. So fully independent in the water, no floaties, nothing,
Hmm.
swimming, turning around. We could throw her in and she would just come right back to the side. Yep.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. And we've got
Yeah.
our kids in starting their swimming lessons for the year, and we tend to have a break over the winter because it's just nobody's swimming at that time. But mid-August, we're back in the pool, and they're at swimming lessons, and they're coming along in leaps and bounds as well. So now, I guess it's a really important, topic to talk about, given where Australia's coming into our swim season. And swimming
Yeah.
is a huge pastime here. We love our swimmers in the Olympics, and we always cheer them on. And we've got like lifeguards everywhere. We've got Bondi Rescue on TV, so we're all about swimming. But I thought I'd start off and just sharing some national stats from Australia. I don't have any Canadian stats, but I have got this national Australian data here, which I think was a really good thing to reflect on and be mindful of as we're coming into our swim season, particularly for young guys. I'm going to talk about men. I'm going to talk about for parents as well, if they're thinking about getting their kids into swimming lessons as well. So I'll just take you through those quickly. And it's so in 2020, 2021, and this data is from the Royal Life Saving website, and I'll put the link in the show notes as well if anyone wants to check it out. So in that financial year, we had 294 drowning deaths in Australia, which was a 20% increase from the year before. 80% of those were male as well. 25 drowning deaths among children aged 0 to 4 years, and people aged 25 to 34 with the highest age bracket as well. So this data is like telling me like the young people, guys, they're the area that we need to focus on and to get this message across. But also our children as well, like as parents, like as a parent myself, I would hate to think what it would be like to pull your child out of a pool who's drowned. And every time I see it on the news, it just pulls at my heartstrings. So from your perspective, as someone who's been in the pool and you're an expert in swimming, and why is it important that we learn to swim?
Yeah. So, I mean, there is data that shows that there is an 88% decrease in drowning possibility when a child knows how to swim and self-rescue independently. And so just that alone tells us that this is a tool that is extremely effective in prevention. And there's really no reason that a child wouldn't be able to learn to swim at a much younger age than they're learning right now.
From your perspective, like what age can they start swimming and learning to swim, or should they? Like, is there a difference between, say, a baby getting in the pool compared to a toddler?
Yeah, so there are different points of view on all of this. I will give you mine. There are programs that start with infants, where they teach infants what to do if they're submerged and how to roll onto their back. That is one way to look at it, certainly. There are also programs that require that a child be able to float on their back first before they start to learn to swim. Those are
Hmm.
comfort-based programs, and those two can have their place. Where I come from, though, where my kind of mentality is with this is that as soon as a child is old enough to wander off, to open a door, to unlatch a gate, it is absolutely time to start introducing them to the water in a way that does not promote comfort before capability,
Hmm.
right? A child should not be comfortable in the water unless they're capable in the water. Now, obviously, there are some children who are just born completely oblivious to any sort of self-preservation in the water. My daughter was one of them. She would just step off the edge and just drop herself in the water, and I would jump in and go get her and pull her up, and she'd say, "Mama, I swim." I'm
Hmm.
like, "Baby, but you didn't." However, for most children, the water is something that they are a little bit timid about, a little bit worried about. And that comes from two places, and these are very important things. One is this innate sense that the water is to be respected, and this is a mammalian sense that we all have. But the other part of it is as little children, they are pulled away from the water, right? A toddler
Hmm.
approaches the water, and the parent goes, "Please be careful. Don't go so close. We need to be careful," right? And so children learn to be a little bit wary of the water, and that is something that they should maintain until
Hmm.
they know how to swim. And that happens around the ages of 2.5 to 3. Well, between 2 and 2.5, even anywhere between there. And I mean, by the age of 4, they should absolutely be swimming, because once we hit 5 to 6, those fears and worries with the brain development that is happening during those years, those become a little more set in, a little more stuck, and a little harder to undo. And so that sweet spot really is anywhere between 2 and 4.
And is it
Yeah.
possible to undo some of those cognitive barriers if they didn't learn to swim so young? Like, say, for example, an older child or even an adult, like can they learn to swim as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It can all be undone and reversed. My son was an example of this, right? At 4, he hadn't reached the point where those thoughts are settling in, but because he had had trauma around the water, a lot of those feelings were really, really stuck. And so, with the same method that I used, we are able to, through exposure therapy and slowly and gently, we're able to get them through this to a place where they are capable in the water,
Hmm.
and then that fear subsides because we learned that we are able to navigate.
Do you feel comfortable sharing what happened with your son?
Yeah, sure. So my husband and I had left our children with someone we trust very, very much, and they were walking along one of the beaches, and there were cousins there as well, and one of the little cousins, littler than mine, was putting rocks in his mouth, and so the person who was caring for them went to check and make sure that he wasn't going to choke on a rock, and in the meantime, my son took a step backwards in the lake and
Hmm.
fell, and he fell backwards, and he wasn't able to get up and
Hmm.
was under the water. We don't really know how long he was under, unfortunately. As soon as she realized that he was under the water, she went and got him. He hadn't lost consciousness, luckily, but we did observe some symptoms that were to be watched
Hmm.
over the next few hours. And after that, what we perceived was a lot of trauma. So he had night terrors for about 6 months, wouldn't even go into the bathroom.
Hmm.
Incredibly difficult. Once we got him into the bathroom and into the bath again, hair washing was incredibly difficult anywhere near his face. And it took quite some time to undo, but
Yeah.
it is possible. It's
Yeah.
possible, yes. Yeah.
What was some of those symptoms that you mentioned that you were watching over the next couple of hours after it happened?
Yeah, so in the 4 to 8 hours following a non-fatal drowning, which is any incident where a child's under and has started the drowning process and we recuperate them, what we want to watch for is symptoms resembling pneumonia. So a wheezing, shortness of breath, bluish lips, right, from
Hmm.
lack of oxygen, a cough that worsens, um, and then things such as confusion
Hmm.
or a child who is not acting like themselves, right? You have a child who's typically, fairly calm or whatever, and is acting very, very silly all of a sudden, and this is not like them, then that is something that you would want to watch for as well. And then extreme fatigue. So the child who was never able to be transferred from car seat to crib, all of a sudden you could pick them
Yeah.
up and move them, and they're not responding. That's a red flag. And so in those cases, what you would do is take your child to the hospital to
Yeah.
have their lungs x-rayed. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you have to take your
Yeah.
son to the hospital or a doctor or anything like that?
We did not. We did not. We were lucky. His body filtered out any excess water in his lungs on his own, and he didn't develop any inflammation. And
Yeah.
so he was okay to stay home. But
Yeah.
it was lots of vigilance for 4 to 8 hours
Yeah.
after the incident. Yeah.
Wow. So he fell into a lake. Yeah.
Yes.
It just made me think of like our beaches. Like a lot of people go to the beach here and we have a lot of rips. So, and they're quite,
Yeah.
can be quite strong. So I can imagine what would happen if he was at one of our beaches and a rip had taken him out to sea and all
And
that type of
tumbled him
stuff.
around. Yeah.
As a parent, like what was going through your mind when you were finding out, oh, this has happened and over those next few hours or days and weeks, like what was going through your mind as a parent?
Yeah, I mean there was a lot of worry, obviously, near panic, near
Yeah.
panic upon hearing the news, right? And obviously worry in the hours following, knowing what I know. Once we were through that, it felt like the worst was over, and it
Hmm.
was after that about finding a solution to rehabilitate
Yeah.
for our son. But it was I mean, I think it would be terrifying for any parent, right?
Yeah.
Especially when especially I think if you're uninformed or underinformed or misinformed, right? I happen to have all of the knowledge I needed in order to make an informed decision at every moment with my child. But if that's not the case for you, then certainly I can imagine it would be a lot more severe of
Yeah.
an emotional impact. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can imagine
Yeah.
also for the impact on the person who was caring for him at the time as well. Like, were they a parent as well? Or-
Yeah, so without going into too much
Yeah.
detail,
Yeah.
that person is a parent as well,
Yeah.
and it was very scary for them as well,
Mm.
and I think in some ways embarrassing too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To
Yeah.
have had that happen while they were there, and certainly no blame is placed because these things happen and they happen very quickly.
Hmm.
Um, and children are wily, right? They do all kinds. In this
They
case, he
do.
hadn't gone very far or anything, but it is, things happen in an instant. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was hard on everybody.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
imagine it would have been a traumatic experience to go through. And I'm glad though he's okay and he's in the water now and he's doing all right in the water and so happy to hear that. Now,
Thank you.
in your work, you help empower parents to take charge of families' water safety through self-rescue lessons. I haven't heard of self-rescue lessons before, so can you talk us through about what that is and what it looks like?
Right. So we talked a little bit before about comfort-based versus infant lessons. And so both of these, infant lessons and comfort lessons, require a child to be able to float on their back.
Hmm.
Now, this is a very vulnerable place to be, right? Floating on your back in the water is very, very vulnerable for anybody. And in order to be able to do this, one has to be able to completely relax and submit to the water. Now, because I don't believe that a child should be comfortable in the water if they're not capable, the idea of submitting to the water doesn't seem like good judgment to me.
Hmm.
So, what we do is we teach children to move in the water to get themselves back. So rather than roll over onto their back if they're found themselves into the water, they assess the situation and then determine what will be the best outcome and then head in that direction. And then in doing all of that, because these children are much younger than what would be capable of taking a breath, we
Hmm.
have an opportunity here to actually help them out with some of the factors that lead to drowning. So worry and panic and anxiety in the water. And so because they're not able to take a breath, we have complete control over all of it. And we're able to take a little bit of time with them in fight or flight
Mm-hmm.
to help them adjust to that idea of discomfort in the water without panic.
Mm.
And so that makes it quite a bit different. And this is why we call them self-rescue.
Yeah. What's some strategies that you use to help try and manage that anxiety or panic in the water? Like, what is there a specific like techniques or skills that you teach the children?
Yeah, so a lot of it is exposure therapy. So we put them in a
Mm-hmm.
situation where they're exposed to this tiny little bit of discomfort in tiny little doses repeatedly throughout their practice session. And in those little tiny doses, we also are helping them integrate the information that though it was difficult, they succeeded. And so by doing this in repetition over and over, we actually delay panic in their brain. So we're using this fight or flight and polyvagal theory to help train them, much like you would if you were learning to stay calm during a panic attack,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I don't know if you've ever had a panic attack or have talked about, but when someone is having a panic attack, everything starts to tighten, you can't breathe, and this and that. But there's a moment in your brain where you can go, hold on, I know what this is. I'm just going to breathe. And once you learn to do that, it actually becomes second nature, and that panic doesn't rise as much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so we use this same technique with the children in the water.
It sounds really interesting concepts. So what about if a child can't like do freestyle or breaststroke or anything like that? Like how do they get to that moment of, calm and then move to say, at the edge of a pool, for example?
Right. So breaststroke and freestyle or front crawl, though wonderful strokes if you want to move quickly in the water, are absolutely unnecessary
Mm-hmm.
to be able to enjoy the water recreationally. And so we don't actually teach any strokes at all until a little bit later, where we introduce only a breaststroke pull. That's it. So basically, children learn to move in the water organically and innately, much like they learn to walk or run or climb, where they're exploring and they figure out what works for them with their
Mm-hmm.
bodies, with their abilities at their current physical level. And so it looks like whatever it looks like for them. And we
Yeah.
adjust only in situations where the child is being counterproductive with movements, right? So if the child were using their arms in such a way that it was pushing them backwards
Mm-hmm.
and their kick was pushing them forwards, then we would intervene. But otherwise, if the child has a forward motion, we leave it be.
Yeah. Do you find that a
Yeah.
lot of children have like a more of a natural innate ability to swim? Like they just move and it just works, or do a lot really struggle with like getting that movement going?
A lot of children just know what to do in the water.
Mm.
They already know. The kick is absolutely innate. If you put a baby underwater, their legs will move. In a child that has not been underwater in a while, sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect that happens. And so we have to kind of relearn.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes back pretty quickly. And once their legs start moving, everything just kind of falls into place.
Yeah, I
Yep.
noticed that every year, like in the last few years, that we would have like a winter break from swimming. And then when we get back in the water, say this time in late spring, early summer, that like our kids, particularly our son, he'd forget the things that he'd learned 3 or 4 months ago. But yeah, very quickly within a space of a couple of days or a couple of swims, it's all come back. And the same's now happening for our daughter as well. Like she would go in the water and just be like a stiff plank, and so we would just move her around the water. But now she's like, yeah, remembering, oh, I've got a kick here, and I'm okay putting my face underwater, and it's coming back very quickly now that we're back in the pool, back at our swimming lessons as well. So it's amazing how quickly it comes back. And you think, oh, I've wasted all this money taking him to swimming lessons, and I forgot it in like 3 months. But it's just like, I guess it's just like riding a bike, really. Like once you've learned, you can do it for life. So now you do in-person training and sessions, but I'm really interested in your virtual coaching because I've never heard of swim lessons or swim instructions over like Zoom. I'm assuming it's via Zoom, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have a couple of different ways that we support you through it. So basically, the course itself is an e-course. So it's
Hmm.
all in an app on your phone, and you follow through the lessons. And so we take you through all the theory where we teach you, how to manage objections with your child, how to set boundaries, how to maintain the trust that you've established, overcoming objections, and then all the water safety stuff that you need, right? So we give you all of this theory. We have a communication method that we use, all of that. So we give you all of that right up front, and that's all in video lessons and with examples too, right? So not just me talking, but with examples of me in the water with a child. So you'll see what it looks like. So we take you through that. And then after that, you get ready to start practicing with your child. And so we take you through the steps you need for each skill. And so there are 6 skills currently in the program, and we're constantly adding more. And so right now you go through the theory on the skill, and then when you're ready, you get in the water with your child for a 10-minute practice, no
Hmm.
more, nice and short, and you practice that skill. And once your child has accomplished the skill, then you go back in, you do your theory on the second skill, and you hop in and do the second skill. And so that takes you through the entire program. And by the end, children are swimming completely independently, face in the water, no floaties, no goggles, no flippers. They
Hmm.
are turning around to get back to safety, and they are able to self-rescue if they fall in. And so we also have all kinds of support mechanisms. So we've got a private community, just like any other virtual program, right? Where you can ask questions, you can post a video of your practice, and we'll give you feedback and
Hmm.
all of that. And then after that, you work with me personally. So we have one-on-one coaching calls where we would hop on Zoom like this
Yep.
and have a conversation and work out, if you're stuck or you're having a challenge, then we work out a plan to move forward through it. And yeah, so far it's going really well, and the parents are
Yeah.
doing incredible.
How
Yeah,
long have you been
I'm
doing the
very proud.
virtual coaching for?
So we've been doing the virtual coaching for 1 full year now. Yeah, where we just hit our in August. We hit our
Yeah.
1 year mark. Yeah.
Awesome. What's some of the advice or support you give to those parents? And I'm thinking about my own children here, is when we first started swimming, they would cling to me like you wouldn't believe and just scream scream like you wouldn't believe as well, because like it was just all foreign. They didn't want to do anything. Like what's and I'm guessing, like, I'm thinking about a parent who's just signed up for your virtual classes and they're thinking, I hope this works. I'm hoping getting value for money, but my child is just not getting in the water like I thought they would. Like, what's some support you give to those parents?
Yeah, so a lot of times when children are crying or yelling about lessons, there's a couple of things going on. If they're in the parents' arms, typically it's simply a control issue more than anything else. So yeah, sometimes they have, some concerns about going under the water. But typically in a child under the age of 4 or 5, um, they won't really know what it is that they're worried about.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're just displaying the worry that you have given them, right? What
Yeah.
you've shown them, right? And so understanding that this is really truly one of the only mechanisms they have for communication, right? They've got this feeling that doesn't feel good and they don't know what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And you're insisting that everything is fine. And they're saying, no, but there's something that I feel that I don't like, right? And so being gentle and recognizing that this is communication
Mm-hmm.
at what they're able at this point, right? And so not getting frustrated and upset at that, because it really truly is just they're trying to tell us something. And
Yeah.
then from there, setting those boundaries to say, you know what, I hear you, I see you, I love you, but this is a non-negotiable. This
Mm-hmm.
one we have to do, just like wearing a seatbelt in the car, brushing their teeth at night. We set boundaries all over the place for our children, right? So this is just another place where until that boundary is set, we're going to have some pushback, right? When you set a new
Yes.
habit, all of a sudden you're like, guess what, guys? You're emptying the dishwasher. Well, it doesn't go over so well at first. And that's okay. They're communicating to you that they don't like it and they're going to
Yeah.
test. They're
Yeah.
going to push back. They're going to test because this is how they learn whether or not we are, and I'm going to use the word trustworthy here, right? But
Hmm.
this is, we're talking about trust that I say what I mean and that I mean what I say, and
Yeah.
that that's not going to change, right? But unless we show them that, they're going to push back. And it's like that with everything. You know,
Yeah.
we're going into preteens now, teens, teens and preteens now. And, you know, it's coming back out, that pushback, that boundary pushing, and like, oh, can I get away with this? Can I get away with that? But that starts, I mean, that starts from little, right?
Yeah.
They start doing
Yeah.
that right from the beginning.
So in the lessons that you do in person, like, do you encourage parents to get in the pool with you, or is it something that's more of a hands off and they leave their child to you, or how does your in-person sessions go?
Yeah, so I have very strict boundaries around my in-person lessons. Parents are not allowed in the water. They are to sit on the side, and they are in fact not allowed to even speak.
Hmm.
They need to be silent, and they are allowed to watch, and that is it. They can smile and thumbs up, and that is it. Because when I am teaching, I take a child through this entire program in 90 minutes.
Mm.
So there's no room for error. There's no room for interference, right? Parents like to coach from the sidelines or offer suggestions, which is at times very helpful. But I need a child to be completely 100% focused on what we're doing right here, right now. And every time a parent interjects, I lose their focus. And I
Hmm.
also lose my, you know, the trusting relationship that I'm building with them, right? Because now all of a sudden there's this other person they trust more that's interjecting into this relationship. Um, and then the other part of it is that I need them to stay who they are with me and not who they are with mom,
Hmm.
because I'm learning who they are, right? So I'm learning, what are they going to push back on? What are they not going to push back on? Is this a child that needs to be pushed? Is this a child that needs to be coddled a little more? What is their personality and learning style like? And so in my in-person lessons, very, very, very strict, closed. I do require that parents be there because I don't believe that anyone should ever teach without
Hmm.
a parent present, ever. And if you're ever asked not to be present during a swim lesson, that to me is a massive, massive red flag.
Hmm.
Um, it's very antiquated. It still does happen. It's very antiquated, and it has been proven time and time again to be unsafe. The parents are to stay. And then what we do is we actually transfer education over on the last day of lessons. So I spend 80 minutes of the 90 with the child teaching them, and then
Hmm.
we spend the last 10 minutes where I am teaching the parents. So I show them the very, very, very basics of how to keep up what they've learned, and that is it. So they
Yeah.
get bare minimum, a little package of this is how you will practice with your child to keep it up, and then they're off on their own.
Yeah. What's the success rate of the people that you've been working with? Like 100%, or do people come back and they need more support?
So in our in-person lessons of the last 8 years, we have 100% success rate in children
Wow.
that are 30 months and over.
Hmm.
And that is, now that being said, these children are neurologically and physically typical.
Hmm.
So in neurologically, physically typical children, 2.5 and up, we have 100% success rate in our one-on-one lessons. And so far, we have 100% success rate in our parent-led as well,
Oh,
which is
cool.
phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
What about atypical or non-typical children, like living with disabilities, special needs children,
Hmm.
however you want to define that? Like, what's some of the work you do there, and how do you support them?
Yeah. So when we first started, I had worked in other avenues with neurologically atypical children, and as well as physically atypical, but that's kind of a whole separate category, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so I had worked with special needs children before, and so when I had a couple of clients approach me with their children, I thought, let's try it. Let's
Yeah.
see what happens, you know. And what we found was that this method works with them too. It works wonderfully with them too because it is developmentally aimed at a child of 18 months to 2 years, right?
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of wiggle room in there. And we use the same program. I mean, I use the same program, children who are 13,
Yep.
I've taught with this exact same method, you know? So we found that it works incredibly well. What we have found is that it works better. And this is, I think, in all cases, it works better when the parents lead it.
Mm-hmm.
And, some of the reasoning is that, the trust, right? You already have your child's trust. They already trust you. You already set boundaries. And so when you set a new one, they're expecting it for the most part. And your child best, right?
Mm.
All that time it takes me learning is this a child needs to be pushed? Is this, when you bring in a child who is neurologically atypical, we're talking about a whole new set of things that can be different, right?
Mm.
If I have a tendency to put my hand in a certain place on a child, and that particular child, because of whatever reason, has issue with that, or that's not comfortable for them, these are things that I don't know. But
Yeah.
parents know these things, right? I mean, they know their children inside out. Nobody knows their children better than than the parents. And so by putting the tools in the parents' hands, what we've seen is that, I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Wow.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Sounds great. Now we talked a bit about trauma as well. Recovering from the trauma, maybe of a near drowning, or just even experience near the water, or something like that. What's some of this work that you do? You talked a bit about exposure style therapy. Are there people coming to you specifically with trauma issues around water?
I do have some. Typically, I redirect adults. Adults come with a whole other set of baggage, right? You're coming with your
Yes.
whole life. And I though believe that everybody should be allowed to swim and should be able to have access to programs. That's a lot of baggage, so
Mhm.
I don't take it, but I
Yep.
do hand it off to a woman who is very specialized, and she does wonderful work with adults. But with children, yeah, it's the exposure therapy is a big one. And then gentleness and affirmations in children who are a little bit older.
Mhm.
I had a client this past summer who severe trauma. She's 9 years old
Mhm.
and unable to even get into the pool when we started. And it's a lot of, instead of saying that was scary, I will, change the wording that comes out of her mouth. So she comes back up and she says, that was scary. And I say, you are so brave. And she says, I am so brave.
Mhm.
And so repeating mantras and affirmations like that throughout sessions, we take a little more time, right? I'm not taking a child who has trauma through the program in 10-minute lessons. We
Yeah.
take our time. And then there's homework. There's homework to be done, when the child takes their shower, there has to be water in the face. When they take their bath, they have to submerge, so it's it can be a very long process depending on the level of trauma and how long it's been there, and how it was integrated as well. So how the people around reacted to the
Mhm.
incident as well. It's not just what happened to the child, and that feeling for them, but when they were pulled out, how did all the people around them react? All these people that they trust, who for to take care of their well-being, right? And how did they react? And when there is panic amongst the adults, that trauma gets a little more settled as well. It's a little bit
Yeah.
bigger. Yeah.
So, thinking about a child like this, and not necessarily this specific child that you worked with who is really, I guess, terrified of the water, like what's some of those
Yeah.
strategies you would use to try? We talked about affirmations, but to try and just even touch the water, like to put the foot in the water or the hand in the water, to sit next to the pool, like what's some strategies that you use there?
Yeah, so if we can't get a child even into the pool area, then obviously, we've got a whole other
Mm.
set of things in front of us that we need to fix. And so it starts by, everybody stays in their clothes. We don't even
Hmm.
put bathing suits on,
Yeah.
and we sit outside the pool area and we get to know each other,
Hmm.
because until they trust me, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
Nothing. So, especially if the child was in a situation where they perceived that they were trusting themselves to go ahead and swim, right? So a child who left lunch and forgot to put their puddle jumper back on and went and jumped in the pool,
Hmm.
all of a sudden they can't even trust themselves anymore,
Yeah.
right? And so building up their ability to trust somebody else out external to them is even harder, because they don't even trust themselves.
Hmm.
And so it's a delicate process, and it takes time. And there's some education in there about feelings too. We try to name the feelings, which can be hard for a lot of children. A lot of families don't talk about their feelings.
Hmm.
So we take them through that as well. And it starts sometimes outside the pool, sometimes across the street from the pool, in the park, sometimes, sometimes in the driveway in front
Mm,
of the house. Like sometimes we're not even able to see the pool from where
yeah,
we start. And that's okay. And that's
yeah.
okay.
In the support that you provided, the lessons you provide, do you do it at a specific location, or do you go and travel and meet people at their homes, or anything like that?
So we have a couple of different packages. So we do at home,
Hmm.
on location private lessons. So just for your family, it would come just for you. And then we also offer what we call public access lessons. Now
Hmm.
we're seasonal in the water. I'm only in the water during those warm months. I refuse to be in the water in the wintertime.
Yeah.
It's too cold. However, so in the summertime we use backyard pools, so everything's
Hmm.
nice and quiet, right? So there's no chaos, no lessons going on everywhere. It's just us in this quiet little backyard pool. um, and then so I actually trade lessons with people who have pools, who are in need of lessons but maybe can't afford our services and want to offer up their pool. And
Hmm.
so I will use their pool for a block of time and invite my clients there, and so they'll come and learn there. Yeah.
Cool. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I love it. Wow, so enlightening, just the approach that you take. And I love this trauma stuff as well. Like, it's really an exciting thing to hear, because when we do have an experience in the water, it can be very traumatic. I remember I had a personal experience once where, and this is, I think, that stereotypical guy thing as well. Like, and we talked about guy stats earlier. Like, we were
Hmm.
out camping near the beach down in Tasmania, very rough water down there. Like, it's not your Queensland water where I live. It's Tasmania is a different beast altogether. And I remember, like, we'd been drinking and sitting by the campfire, and we went down to the beach. I had my boogie board, because I love a boogie board, and I was just sitting on the beach, and I actually remember seeing some young children getting swept towards some rocks. Now, I didn't think twice about it. I jumped in with my boogie board, and we helped them get out of that situation, because it's very dangerous. But the fatigue that I had, from being in that hard and heavy water, but also because I knew I'd had a few drinks beforehand getting into water, and drinking and getting in the water is, you should not do it. But I kind of went into rescue mode. And it's just lucky that I was there and I could get them. But then also we had some surfers that came a bit later and helped us all get back into the beach as well. And there was no lifesavers there either. This is a secluded beach where there was not much else around. And I think that's why I got in the water. I would have never normally gone into the water if I'd had a few drinks. And from that moment, I was really in shock, and a bit hesitant to get back into the beach water as well. And now certainly I wouldn't think about getting in the water if I had been drinking. It was just a one-off thing that happened for me. And I think, to reflect on that, for a guy, a lot of guys would be around the water drinking and so forth. I mean, the stats there that say that 25 to 34-year-olds are the highest age group, and 80% of drowning deaths are guys in Australia. It's something that we just need to be mindful of around the water, and be safe, but also as parents as well, if we're having barbecues around the pool and all this type of stuff, to make sure that we're keeping an eye on our kids and we're keeping safe. And in Australia, we all have to have fences around our pools. That's mandatory here. So making sure that you've got your fence up and the gate's working, it's locking properly, and watching that your kids aren't climbing up. I caught my kids trying to climb up our fence yesterday, actually. So they got a bit of a stern word about why that's a no. But yeah, I think it's a timely discussion to have coming into summer, in Australia as well, but across the world as well. People still swim across the world. So I'm really thankful that you've come on, and you've shared your insights, your personal story with your son as well. It must be, my heart bleeds that happened, but I'm glad that he's okay. And I'm so excited to hear about your virtual stuff as well. So thanks so much for your time this morning. I really appreciated it.
No, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Yeah, it certainly can be, it can change the way we look at the water when we have an incident like that.
Mm,
For sure, for sure. And you're not wrong to be hesitant before going back in. Um, here with all the lakes that we have, we actually see a surge in drowning rates by the age of 15 in
Wow.
boys. Yeah,
Wow.
because they go out to the lake and they're drinking underage. But
Mm.
that's sort of things that happen, right? And we see a lot of accidents in those age groups as well. That's something to be mindful of as parents, is that if your child has not been in the water for some time, if you've got older children, they haven't been in the water for some time, and you think that they're hanging out at cottages or stuff like that, it might be good to get to a local pool and do a little making sure that we're fresh up on our stuff. Sometimes kids can be boisterous and don't always think about the consequences, and it only takes somebody pushing someone into a pool at a party or off
Yeah.
the end of the dock or something, and yeah. To your point about barbecues, we actually recommend that parents have, either if you can't hire a lifesaver locally, then that you have a water watcher. And so
Hmm.
we actually a little name tag or a pin or something for the person who is currently in charge of the pool, and that person
Yeah.
has to be sitting by the pool during that time. But if anybody wants to, now that you guys are getting into swim season, on our website, right there on our main page, there's a pop-up for a free guide for 15 ways to keep your children safer in the water. And so with that, you've got all kinds of little tricks and tips on those gates and everything in there for anybody who's interested. Um,
Awesome.
yeah.
Wonderful. So how can people get in touch? Like what's your website address? And we'll put the link in the show notes as well. But yeah, feel free to plug your website and any other links that you think might be useful for us.
Great. Yeah. So I can be reached at swimtosafety.com. And through there, you've got our contact us and all of that, and all our virtual program information is there as well. My email is there, Selena at
Mhm.
swimtosafety.com. You can reach me there. We are all over social media at Swim to Safety by Selena, everywhere. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, where else? Facebook, everywhere. We also have a free parents group for parents who are looking for just more water safety information, a place to ask questions if they're unsure. And we do that via a Facebook community. And if you look up the hashtag STSP, Swim to Safety Parents, STSP, then you'll find us there, and you can go ahead and
Awesome.
join that group. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
We'll grab all the links and yeah, put it in the show notes so that people can link in if they want to as well. Thanks so much for your time. But I'd like to one more question before I let you go. And I always like my guests to plug something that makes them feel good. So Mindful Men's all about, things that we can do to improve our day to day. And it doesn't have to be about swimming or anything like that, or parenting. It could just be something that you're watching on telly or listening to, or a book you've read,
Mm.
or even just like an activity that you're really enjoying at the moment.
That's a good one. Well, you know what? I actually recently got back to music. I had let music slip from my life for years and years and years. And I used to play the piano as a child, and I have gotten back into it with an
Cool.
app called Simply Piano. It's incredible. It listens to what you're playing and you play along with it and you learn, and it's phenomenal. And I never thought that I'd be seeing progress this quickly. Getting back into it. So yeah,
Awesome. Would that be something that's
yeah.
useful for someone who's learning, like never even touched piano? Because I've always wanted to play piano or keyboard, and I've got the guitar in the background, but never been on the keys. So is it something that I could potentially learn how to do it as well?
It absolutely is. They take you through everything fundamentals right from the beginning. And actually, they have a Simply Guitar app, which I have just picked up because I have a guitar sitting in the corner that I swore to myself 10 years ago I was going to start learning to play. And yeah, so I actually started using that one too, and from scratch, like nothing. I bought it because it sounded nice and it's white and pretty. And so now I'm learning, and I'm learning with this companion app, and it's been phenomenal. So yeah, absolutely. You
Awesome.
can
Love it.
pick it up
Oh,
from
wonderful. Thanks so
nothing.
much for the tips, and then yeah, I'll put them in the show notes as well. So Selena, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I hope your hubby's got dinner ready now and everything's packed for tomorrow. And thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. It was so nice talking with you.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode, and I hope you got some value from it. If anything triggered your mental health today, please reach out to your support networks. Also, if you loved what you heard, be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your mates. For more from Mindful Men, you can check us out on Instagram and YouTube, and I'll throw the links to these pages in the show notes below. But until next time, stay mindful.